in our lives, in our investments, seek for asymmetrical returns. So, what would be an asymmetrical returns? Where you expose yourself to a situation where the risks are limited, but the returns they are basically infinite. You can go to the moon with the returns.
There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can absolutely light up your funnels. Let's go. This is the Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic. Join me as I uncover the secrets of the world's most elite CMOs and marketing leaders. The Revenue Driven CMO is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI driven performance agency that makes you smarter. Hey, welcome everybody to another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO. I am your host, Chris Mechanic, here with a really exciting guest. This is a marketing and a growth veteran, deep expertise in building and scaling teams and programs in a variety of different capacities over the years. But he's got a proven track record in really driving revenue and fostering growth through a combination of strategy and vision, as well as operational excellence. So he's exactly the type of guest that we really love having on the show. Um, and his work has spanned roles in various high growth companies where he's really been instrumental in aligning like go to market teams and strategies with the customers and their needs, and really empowering teams to deliver, really kind of game changing results. So I think his experience and insights are going to be invaluable for anybody looking to understand kind of the nuances of scaling organizations and navigating the challenges, in today's business environment. He's currently head of marketing for APAC and EMEA at VTEX, which is a really exciting company that I can't wait to learn a little bit more about. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Mr. Gabriel uh, Falcione. How are you, Gabriel?
Hello, Chris. How are you? Thanks for
Um,
the introduction and thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, I'm really excited to be speaking with you. You know that we like to get right to the value right off the very beginning. So why don't you share with the audience, like, what is one of your biggest secrets to success?
Yeah, for sure. So, Chris, I have never my career, it's not like the traditional route in marketing. So, I started my career as a journalist.
Mm,
I used it to be a hard news and business journalist back in 2005 in Brazil. I'm born and raised in Brazil, in Sao Paulo.
hmm
And I started to transition to marketing after 5 years into journalism. Uh, it started to seem more interesting to me, like the marketing ecosystem and everything. And I do remember that at that time, I started to read all the kind of books that I could, like everything that got into my hands, I was reading about marketing, about everything. And then the second like area that I started to, because my first role in marketing was with content marketing. And as I had worked previously for a business magazine in Brazil, I was working for a fintech in Brazil. Brazil
hmm
had like at that time a very like exciting market of startups, especially fintechs.
hmm
Uh, and then I started to read a lot of books about investing and everything. And I got to one guy that changed my vision about not only marketing, investing, but a lot of things in my life. I'm quite sure your audience knows quite well Nassim Taleb and his books about like um, the one that I like the most is the anti-fragile. So I really like the way he talks about how we should in our lives, in our investments, seek for asymmetrical return. So what would be an asymmetrical return? Where you expose yourself to a situation where the risks are limited, but the returns, they are basically infinite. You can go to the moon with the returns. Well,
Mhm.
get into a current topic. I don't know how it is in the US, but at least here in Europe, it's a very hot topic now. The current bull markets that we have in the crypto. Uh,
Yeah.
so everyone is talking about that. So that's
Yeah,
a
that's
typical asymmetrical situation. So let's say if you decide to expose yourself like 10% of your portfolio to crypto, you can have like a massive return. And if everything goes south, you will lose 10% of your portfolio. And I think, okay, it hurts, but you can keep living without that.
yeah.
So that is an example of an asymmetrical return that you can have with investments. Getting back to marketing. So where I see the anti-fragile uh, idea getting into live in marketing, I see that most of the time we are spending like our efforts into very Red Sea crowded uh, verticals. I
Yeah.
can give you one example, at least for me in the B2B, like trade fairs. Trade fairs for me is a Red Sea example. Like
Yeah. Just surrounded by competitors. You're one in
your competitor is always going to have a better looking booth than yours,
yeah.
a better idea for an activation than yours. And what is the return? Like you are exposing yourself where the risks are high. If you have like a lousy booth, if you have a lousy live activation, the risks are high, stakes are high here. And what are the returns? They are not asymmetrical. They are not. They are not at all. So where I try to bring a new perspective to my team, to the company in my role is pushing us to expose us to where the risks are asymmetrical.
Mm,
And
I like
on my perspective, at least for us, VTEX, like we are a massive company in Brazil and Latin America. We have like a fantastic brand recall in those markets. We had our IPO in 2021. And then, of course, after that, we accelerated our GTM into key markets as the US, EMEA, and APAC. And we are building up our brand into these markets. So if
yeah.
you go to Brazil and you say, "Hey, I work at VTEX," everyone knows about it. Everyone knows. You don't need to explain uh, what is the company doing. But that's a total different situation in other markets because that's the moment we are expanding our operations overseas. So where I try to bring the asymmetrical idea here is where can I expose the brand with a limited risk and have asymmetrical returns? So it's for sure it's not field marketing. It's not trade fairs.
Right.
Uh, it could be PR sometimes, but then you got to another topic that I wanted to discuss with you further on. There is how can you justify PR ROI, especially when you have sales driven companies? Like they struggle to understand the ROI of PR. And sometimes, even for us, it's tough to understand. So, so I am eliminating those two pillars
Mhm.
for looking for a symmetric. And then what brings to one point where we are exploring, not only at VTEX, but in previous companies that I used it to work for, is performance marketing. That's for sure. Because there you have, so let's say, bread and butter of paid media advertising for B2B, Google ads, LinkedIn ads. You have some new channels pumping up recently. Reddit. Reddit is growing pretty big. It's been very interesting for us recently.
Yeah.
Some very nice results, depending on the country. I know Reddit is huge in the US, here in Europe and in Asia. It depends on the country. But let's get back to Google Ads. So if you put an ad, what are your risks? In Google Ads, there are basically no risk. It's the time that you are spending or the agency you may be paying to put that ad online.
Yeah.
If no one clicks on your ad, you're not paying anything to Google. It's a pay per click.
Right.
So you don't lose anything. But if you have a nice strategy that encompasses not only paid media, but SEO, but content marketing, but PR, eventually you will get to a point where your ICP will be clicking into your ads. And okay, we know the cost per click recently, they have been higher and higher. Inflation is pumping also in paid media advertising. But come on, we are talking about $5 for a click that can potentially turn into $1 million contract.
Yeah.
That's an asymmetrical return from my perspective. So
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a secret, but that's a little bit of my vision that I try to execute on a daily operations, not only at VTech, but in previous companies that I used it to work for.
Yeah. No, that, I like that a lot. And you could probably make that quite quantitative if you wanted to. Like, for instance, I'm envisioning a spreadsheet where you've got all of the potential ideas or channels or things that you might invest in column A. And then in columns B, C, D, and E, you sort of rank them, right? Like, what is the downside risk in terms of money lost? What is the downside risk in terms of time investment? What is the upside risk if we're, or what is the upside return if we are correct about it? And then maybe how confident are we in this thing? So if it's like generally low level of risk, potential for high upside, and there's a relative degree of confidence, then it would score high, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah,
exactly.
I could see like a
And
whole, model, like a quantitative model baked out around that.
yeah, and even when you need to seek for a buy-in for like the CFO or the finance department, depending on the company. I do remember this is funny. I used it to work for a PR agency in Brazil back in 2016. It is like a massive PR agency in Brazil, but they were struggling to have a digital division. So they were losing a lot of money. They were kind of outsourcing all the digital services to other companies. And they hired me to say, hey, can you implement a digital division here? We want to do everything digital. And I said, yes, that's fine. And then and it was a family owned business. And my boss at that time, a very conservative guy. And I said, hey, we're going to do some Google ads here for our clients. And then he said, okay, how does that work? And then I said, it's a pay per click strategy. We are going to select some keywords and everything. I went through the basics of Google Ads. And then when he looked at that, the numbers, like the click for a specific keyword would be $3.12, something like that. And then he was like, oh, okay, but like, what happens? And then I said, if no one clicks here, you won't pay anything. And he didn't believe. He was like, no, I don't want to put this like, Google will eventually call us and charge us.
Yeah.
And then I said, no, they don't. Like that's the model is not like that.
Yeah.
So that that brings me to another topic that I wanted to discuss with you. But sorry, you are the host. You go.
Well, I mean, I think in the case of Google, similar to Bitcoin, the downside risk in the case of Google could be that you get a whole bunch of clicks, but that you never get that $1 million contract, or you never get,
Yeah.
any leads from it or anything like that. Um, One thing on the symmetry, or on asymmetry. So growing up, I was a performance person. Like I got into this world via SEO and Google ads and, paid social. Like that was just my background and my upbringing. And I was always confused when sometimes companies, they didn't want to spend anything on Google. Like like, I've had experiences where I'm pitching to a large company, say a bank. Like a bank is banks are famous for like not really spending all that much, or being very conservative. So it was like pulling teeth to get them to invest 10,000 bucks a month in Google, but then they would turn around and do like billboards or out of home advertising or TV commercials, which were not pay per click, like, and they weren't measurable in any way. And they weren't even really asking the question of like, does this drive any revenue? It was just a thing. And they were just willing to do that. And I always thought that was like really peculiar. And, I just didn't understand it. But lately, like over the last several years, it's dawned on me the power of that kind of brand advertising. So, like brand advertising, awareness, the Chris of 2015, I'm like, it's a waste. Don't do that.
Mhm.
Zero return. But the Chris of like the 2020s is like, maybe that actually is asymmetrical in nature. Like if you take 10% of your budget and spend it on just like general awareness building, then over time, this kind of snowball effect takes place where people know you. So they're searching for you by brand. Those branded clicks on, Google are going to be cheaper because you're very, it's your brand. So you have maximum relevancy. But then even when you're advertising on LinkedIn or whatever, like I bet you your campaigns in Brazil, where you were well known, did a lot better than your campaigns in, APAC, where nobody knew you, right?
Yeah.
So brand and I guess PR as an extension of that, depending on how you look at it, could be like the biggest waste of money in the world, or it could potentially be like a massive asymmetrical return potential.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And I guess the point here for me is, of course, finding the right balance, but also something that I think like we marketeers, we are at, from my perspective, I'm including myself here. We are a completely failure on that. There is internal communication, communication with other teams, not only sales. Sales is, of course, uh, where we have most contact with, but finance, the CRO, the CEO, like upward communication, lateral communication. We are pretty bad at that, like on my perspective. And
Yeah.
and you know the joke, like no one goes into accounting saying, "Hey, I'd like to propose a new model for the balance sheet here. I was talking to my nephew and that happens in marketing all the time.
Yeah.
So you know that. And I guess there is no, from me, there is no communication that is not over communication. Like over communication for me is table stakes nowadays. Like
Yeah.
and it's our, it's on us, it's on us to seek alignment, to over communicate what we are doing, why we are doing, what are the expected results, why we shouldn't expect a fast ROI for a brand awareness activity, what is media out of home and how it will pay off eventually. So uh, I put the fall on us here from
Yeah.
my perspective.
Well, do you think that's an asymmetrical risk reward opportunity, like to increase the amount of communication? I mean, it doesn't cost that.
For sure, for sure, for sure. You see, I was taking a look those days at my calendar, and I noticed that I was like 30 to 35% of my time in meetings. and most of them internals. And my first reaction was, gosh, that's a lot. I need to cut it by half. That was my first reaction. And then I sleep over that. And then I said, no, that's right. That's right. Because my boss, he's not from marketing. He's from sales. The boss of my boss is not from marketing either.
Yeah.
So, and we shouldn't take for granted that they will know exactly what a performance campaign should be,
Yeah.
what a media out of home campaign, how it should perform. Like it's on us to over explain it, to over communicate it, to be accountable about the dashboards and how we share the results, like full transparency mode in terms of what's going on in our funnels, what are the pain points that we are having with MGL to MQL, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
for me, it's the only way around, and it's asymmetrical. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I think 30%, I think some of the people listening might be like 30 as in 30. I think a lot of CMOs these days are spending 65, 70, 75% of their time in meetings,
Yeah.
not always by choice. Um, so I want to talk about VTEX a little bit. I'm curious to learn more about it and what you guys are doing. But before that, um, one just very small detour. Like when we were getting on the call, we were talking about Europe and some of the differences between marketing in Europe versus like what you'd experienced other places, or no, between Italy and Germany specifically. But at the risk of potentially, going on a side tangent, I am curious, like, what are the major differences that you've seen, around the world in terms of how people, both marketers and the executives that they report to, like how they think about marketing and how they kind of approach it differently?
I would say specifically into the marketing, I didn't see a lot of difference, to be honest. Like maybe the reason is Brazil has a good marketing culture, very skilled marketing professionals and everything. But where I see that these differences is on the way of work that can, of course, reflect into the specific activities of marketing. I do remember, Chris, my first job in Europe was in Italy. I was working for a native ads company. It was a French group based in Italy. I was working in Milan and I got there 2018. I had a small team. I had like three people reporting to me. And we got this huge contract out of the blue. We got this huge contract and we had a delivery. It was a Wednesday, something like that. And we had a delivery for Monday. It was Wednesday afternoon. We had a delivery for Monday. I took a look at the spreadsheet and I quickly noticed, well, we are going to work on the weekends here. And I had just came from Brazil. I put my team on a small room and I said, folks, here's the situation. We have this new contract. We already have the first delivery. We have to over deliver and everything. And I mean, Thursday and Friday won't be enough. We will need to work on Saturday and maybe even Sunday. Chris, I do remember the look in their faces as I was like telling the bad words about their entire generation. Like they were crazy. And they
Yeah.
looked at me like, what do you mean by working on Saturday and Sunday? And I had just came from Brazil where I don't know, I have never worked for the US, but in Brazil, like if something had to be done, we would do it like over the weekend. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then like that was the first cultural shock that I had. That was the
Yeah.
very first one.
Right.
And then you notice a lot of ways of working. For instance, like Brazilian. I came from Brazil. I'm happy to bring like a Latin and Brazil perspective to your audience. Um, we you can't be straightforward with Brazilians. in the work environment. Like Brazilians can be quite sensitive about that. So if you bring me, if I ask you to do a test, you bring me the test is shitty. I'm not
Yeah.
gonna say the test is shitty. I'm gonna say, Chris, I really love it the way you've thought about this and that. Maybe we can improve a little bit point A and point B, but all the other things are fantastic. That's the Brazilian way of giving a bad feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you come to Europe, some cultures like France, Italy, Spain, Germany, they are very straightforward. If it's a shit test, they will say code 30. This is bad, pretty bad.
And
So in our company and in other companies, we have this cultural mixed pot, like not only different countries, different generations, like all together. And I would say part of the challenge is to find the sweet spot where everyone can perform and at the same time feeling that their culture is being respected.
yeah,
So that's something very important, I would say.
that's a really tough one. I mean, that's a tough culture clash. I think here in the US, it's situational, right? Like you have some companies and some leaders who, like Steve Jobs, like he's the original one to say, "Hey, this is shit," right? Um, but then you've got others who are very, very empathetic and very, sort of kind and will, overemphasize the good and very delicately deliver the bad. But that's funny. Yeah, I mean, that's a tough one.
And it's from my perspective, it's underrated because when you get like a global GTM and you say, "Hey, this is our playbook, and we are going to execute one, two, and three," like almost if it was a math. And if you ignore the cultural like aspects that are underneath that, that can blow in your face very easily. Very
Yeah.
easy.
Yeah. So I can easily see, like, if you take the direct and straightforward nature of France or Germany and bring it to Brazil, I could see that going, really bad. But what happens if you bring the kind and careful Brazilian attitude over to France and Germany? You know what I mean?
Mo- yeah, most of the time they take that as if we are slow in giving feedback. I'll go cut to the chase, cut to the chase.
Yeah.
Or they feel even worse. They feel like we are not being honest. We are not providing our honest feedback about. I have a guy working for me. I had a guy working for me in France, and like after 6 months, 6 months, he said, "Hey, you are not going to give me a bad feedback," and I was, "No, you're doing great. Like I'm not going to give you a bad feedback only for the sake of it." Like,
Yeah.
and he was like, "Are you being honest?" And yes, I am. So they have this idea that we struggle to be honest, and then they'd rather have like the reality, even if it's bad on their face. And so that's the way they take it. Like they say first that we are being slow, like move fast, like cut to the chase. Tell me what I need to do. And the second one that they are afraid we are not like sharing everything, that we are not being completely honest with them. That's and then you need to balance that as well. Like when you get like different cultures at the same uh, environment, let alone time zones. Let's not talk about that.
Yeah.
But anyways,
It kind of reminds me of politics in a way because it's like the classic stereotypical politician is one that tap dances around questions and, really chooses their words carefully and never wants to piss anybody off. And then you've got like Trump, love him or hate him, like he is direct. Like he's gonna tell you what he is thinking. It's like he's got no filter. He's just gonna say it as he as he feels it.
exactly, exactly.
Cool, man. Well, this is fun. I can tell this is a good episode because the time's flying by. Let's talk about VTEX a little bit. Uh, I'm just curious. Well, I have heard of it, but I'm not intimately familiar. I'm sure some of the folks listening, have varying degrees of familiarity. But can you give us just a little bit of background? Like, what do you guys do, or what's your focus?
Yeah, for sure. We are an enterprise level e-commerce platform. So
Okay.
basically, we empower. We are the tech providers. We empower the brands to fulfill their digital operations when it comes to B2B, B2C, a marketplace, a direct to consumer. So any kind of enterprise level brand that wants to sell online, to create their own digital roadmap, we are the tech providers behind that. So we started in Brazil 25 years ago. We grew pretty fast, first in Brazil and then in Latin America. And in 2021, we got our IPO in New York. We are the only Latin America software company to be listed in the New York Stock Exchange.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, we are very proud of that. And then after that, of course, we accelerated the GTM into those new markets as, of course, the US, EMEA, and APAC. That's the in a nutshell our story recently.
Gotcha. That's really interesting. Yeah. So it would be almost like the same category as a Shopify, but probably for more like enterprise and custom enterprise
Exactly.
grade
You got it.
applications.
You got it to the point. Exactly. You got it to the point.
Very cool. I love that. And then so did you start with them in Brazil and then they dispatched you to EMEA or to that region
No,
to start it up there?
actually, I was living in Italy and I was about to move to Germany at that time to work for a startup, a German startup based in hospitality in the middle of COVID, by the way. And I was thinking every day how these guys are going to pay me. Like
Yeah.
the market is struggling, of course. And but anyways, I was ready to move to Germany when a headhunter called me and said, "Hey, I need a senior marketing professional that can speak Portuguese, English, Italian, and Spanish. I don't find anyone. Would you like to have a conversation with this company?" And at first, I'm ready to go to Germany. I was like packed. My suitcase, like everything was packed. I was
Yeah.
ready to go to Germany. And then she said, "No, come on, just like the first call, like help me here." And I said, "Okay, that's fine." And then I got like the first conversation, the second one. I got in love with the company
Mhm.
and the idea of being an expat working for a Brazilian company that is growing very fast. That's very good. That's very nice. So I decided to start at VTEX, and it was 2020,
Mhm.
mid of 2020.
Awesome. So, what's really driving your guys' revenue engine, like, from a marketing perspective? What's really working for you?
Yeah, I would say it's a mix of we have been relying heavily on some analysts reports, so they are like the gatekeepers of the market, especially for brands that don't have like a high level of brand awareness as well. So in our market, for instance, we have the folks of Gartner, the folks of IDC. So when they are in their reports, they are telling the market, "Hey, you should take a look at those folks here. Their
Mhm.
solution is solid." So we are relying a lot on this, and of course, we are multiplying the reach of their reports.
Mhm.
We just got one to be launched. Uh, um, so this is a very important pillar for us.
Mhm.
The other one, of course, being, as I said in the beginning, like performance marketing. That is something, by the way, completely new to the company. Like 2 years ago, 2 years ago, that's like when I stopped to think about it, that's crazy. 2 years ago, there was almost a zero investment within the company in performance marketing, and it's growing its importance within the marketing mix very fast.
Yeah.
And the largest deals that we got in Europe in the last 2 years, they came from performance marketing. So
Really?
we validate internally because that's also important to internally validate the channel, let's put it that way. And now we are expanding. Now we are willing to expand. We are, sorry, we are wetting our feet with new channels. As I said, Reddit. We are having some very promising results with Reddit. We are trying different strategies, and now we can say we have a stronger performance marketing culture winning the company. Again, it's important for us. The trade fairs, they are important. We have to be there. But we have decreased our participation from 2 years ago to now. Uh,
Mhm.
that the results, they are like the ROI, more than the results, the ROI, they are getting worse and worse. Like the cost of activation for an event, a huge trade fair in Germany, for instance, when you compare to the money that you can spend on performance media, they are like very different. And the results, the ROI that you have in performance, they are faster, easier to measure. So that's one of the reasons that we've been decreasing the importance of trade fairs. Of course, there are some that we can't afford not to be there,
Yeah.
uh, especially because of brand positioning and building up the brand awareness. But we've been very selective about where exactly we want to be. So we came like 2 years ago, we had easily over, we were sponsoring easily over 10 events in the UK, a key
Yeah.
market for us. This year it was one.
Oh, wow.
So we got to a point where we say, okay, we need to be in this one, and this is the one that we will put our bets. And what we've been doing, we have been organizing a smaller petit comité, closed doors, roundtables, dinners, and where we can actually engage with the audience. Because we got to like COVID changed everything, right? Like we had one situation before COVID, that during COVID, we had the webinar frenzy. People got sick of webinars. And then just after COVID, at least here in Europe, when like we could like be in the events again, we had another frenzy about events. And like we had a lot of events on a weekly basis. We
Yeah.
kind of we kind of leverage that wave, but then we notice like from 1 year and a half, the quality of the interactions and people were going only for the sake of it
Yeah.
on most of these events. Like, and let's be honest, if we have, if you have like over 10 events in one small market as Spain, for instance, there is not enough real good content for you to showcase there. So
Yeah.
we know sometimes the quality of the content and the interactions, they are not as good as you could expect. So that's the reason why we've been more selective with field marketing activations. On the other hand, we have our own events that there we are spending more money, more time, and more energy because we can control more who we want to invite to be a spokesperson. What are the topics that we want to explore, and the way, the angle that we want to explore here. And this is something that is growing in importance within the company recently, creating our own events in Europe, in APAC, in the US. And
Yeah.
that's something very, very nice.
I would say that's asymmetrical in nature, like on a risk adjusted return basis. Cause it's probably, I mean, it still costs money and takes time, but it probably costs less money, takes less time, and results in like much more, much richer communication.
Exactly. Something that I'm very proud of, the vision of the leadership of the company when we run our events, like even the smaller ones, like the closed door roundtables, all the way up to like massive events that we've been organizing in Europe, the content, there is a clear separation. Like we have some commercial activations, and that's okay. And that's the sales team that is taking care of that. But the content pillar, they are protected.
Yeah.
So, and that's where you actually have a nice event. It's where
Yeah.
you have an event that you want to go to have good quality content. That what,
Yeah.
from my perspective, that what makes the difference. Okay, I don't want to go exactly. I don't know. I've never been to a competitor massive event in the US, for instance, but I'm quite sure they provide good content. And that's the point. That's where we want to be. Right. I'm going there, of course, to engage with VTEX people, of course, to have a nice time, but I'm interested in good content, in content that can change my perspective, can challenge my perspective on my daily operations. And that's exactly what we try to bring in our events. And that's the reason why we've been pivoting from sponsoring 30-party trade fairs and putting that money on our own events where we can control the quality of the content and the quality of the interaction.
Yeah. No, 100%. I've also, been toying around with an idea for field marketing, which is so instead of doing like a booth where you have to, you know, spend a lot for the booth, spend a lot for the sponsorship, and then, stay at the booth the whole time, you have to have people there. What if instead of that, you got like twice as many people from your team? So instead of bringing 5 people basically to run the booth, you bring 10 people, skip the booth, forget about the booth, but instead get like some cool t-shirt, which like basically explains the value proposition in a funny way on the t-shirt, and unleash these 10 different people to go out, attend the sessions, and just like be a networker alongside of the group as opposed to being a vendor. Cause there's a weird vibe around being a vendor, right? Like you're standing there all vulnerable by yourself in in a blood red sea of competitors, like vying for the attention of a small handful of prospects. Like that doesn't feel great to be in that scenario. Like, why not just send us a bigger group with t-shirts, no booth, and just like work the floor,
I like the idea. I like the idea. It's
right?
asymmetrical.
I think so. And that's my last question for you. Looking forward into the future, what other asymmetrical opportunities are on your radar?
I guess this is inevitable for us working in marketing, working in any other area is AI. We we have, let's be honest, we have completely no idea where this is taking us. And we are only in the very, very beginning of this journey. We have been using some tools, of course. I'm quite sure you've been using some tools as well. But I would say there will be a tipping point where we will look at the past and say, wow, I can't believe this. I do remember I was reading something about Tesla in the past, and there was this guy. I don't remember his name. It was like a scientist, and he was talking about the self-driverless mode car, like of Tesla, and how safe it is and everything. And then he said, it will be a time where we will look and say how crazy we were. We allowed people to drive the car.
Yeah.
How crazy it is. So it's the same with airplanes. Like most of the takeoff and the landing, they are in automatic mode. We know that.
Yeah.
So we will get to a point down in the line where we will see, oh, daddy, you use it to drive the car, something like that.
Yeah.
So and in marketing, I'm quite sure there will be a massive benefit of AI with data,
Yeah.
and that's where we can have the buy-in of the different internal departments to run some crazy ideas, but
Yeah.
we need to be backed up by data. And nowadays we have still data silos. It's tough to mine the data, to display the data in a dashboard that a no marketeer can understand. And I think there's exactly where AI will come and close this equation. So I can't wait to see where AI will take us in that in like in the near future. I would say 5 years, but I guess 5 years for AI is too much time. I would say less than that.
Well, I have been obsessed with this, and I'll mention it just for the benefit of the audience. But I happen to believe that we're moving into the AI 2.0 era right now. So in AI 1.0, it's where the AI is in a chatbot, right? Like you go to the chatbot, you're directing the chatbot, and you're doing tasks, but you're doing them one step at a time, somewhat manually, and you have to take the inputs, copy and paste them over to your CMS or whatever, or your platform, and then you're doing it. AI 2.0 is the AI agent era. So agents are not confined to a chat box. They can basically navigate around. They can navigate a computer very much like you or I would, clicking and scrolling and changing tabs or, filling out forms or what have you. Uh, and they're designed to complete multi-step uh, workflows completely autonomously. So AI 1.0, it's like, hey, let's write a blog post. Okay, I'm going to go to ChatGPT. Hey, I'm writing a blog post. What's a good topic? Okay, great. Choose your topic. Okay, now write me an outline. Like humans are the ones that are doing all these things. But there's going to be these specialized agents basically designed to do like almost every part of the job. Um, and so I think our kids, when they grow up, will be like, Daddy, you used to actually like do this? Like, you used to actually, like, log in to WordPress and publish a page? Or, like, you used to actually write an if-then query in Microsoft Excel, like, from scratch, you know? Like, I think our kids growing up, it's gonna be a totally different
And
world where
that's interesting, Chris, because today I have the free account of ChatGPT. I don't have the premium account, and today I got a message from ChatGPT saying, "Hey, your memory is full." And at first I was okay. I didn't care about it. I was working, and I said, "Okay, that's fine." But then I realized he will lose completely our conversation from now on, and he will lose the capacity to bring me ideas related to previous ideas that I gave to him.
yeah,
There's exactly where the agent AI 2.0 will get.
yeah,
Like he has the memory and he is capable of connecting the dots and predict where you want to get.
yeah.
Like so it's interesting that you said it happened today, like hours ago.
Yeah, 100%. AI agents, and I'm not just making it up. I mean, all the big tech companies are racing towards this. Like, I believe Microsoft just released their first 10 AI agents in the Dynamics 365 suite. Mark Zuckerberg on the last Meta conference call, like the earnings call, said the word agent, I believe, like 17 times. And he said that 5 or 10 years in the future, every single business is going to have multiple agencies, like even the small mom and pop shops, multiple agents rather, the same way that everybody today has a website. Like it wasn't that long ago where websites were very, innovative and cutting edge. It was only a very small number of companies that had them. Then you fast forward 10 years and now suddenly you have to have a website just like you had to have a business card in the past. Um, but Zuckerberg says that that's what agents, AI agents will be the website of the, 2020s. So
That's a pretty excited moment to be alive.
very, very much so. Very much so. Well, hey, I really, really enjoyed this, Gabriel. This has been awesome. For everybody listening, if you enjoyed this, if you learned anything, if you laughed a little bit, share this with a friend, pay it forward, drop us a like or a comment. We always appreciate that. Gabriel, for folks that would like to learn more about you or VTEX, where would you direct?
You can find me at LinkedIn. I'm Gabriel Falcione. That is my surname, and I will be very happy to interact with your audience there.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gabriel. This was awesome. Hang on the line 1 second. We'll wrap up. But for everybody else, that was another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO, and we will see you next time. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us here today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at revenuedrivencmo.com. That's revenuedrivencmo.com. And hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours. Even if you're already a client, if you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. And that's just because you're a listener of this podcast. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenuedrivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenuedrivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.